Yo, Big Italy 42 here with you talking about DraftKings slate for tonight. Obviously, really weird slate. First game starting off at 10:05 for the main slate here. And only 5 games, all of them in late pitchers parks. So not expecting a whole lot of scoring tonight. Vegas isn't either. A lot of low totals here. Some big-time names on the mound. And the top starting with Corey Kluber is $11,600. He's in a matchup tonight against a Seattle team that has just not been very good. I mean, only a minus 117 favorite for Kluber, 7-run total here. But then you look at what Seattle's been doing against righties this year, and it's not much. 23rd in the league in team WOBA at 296. 156 team ISO is fair, but 22% strikeout rate. Couple that with the fact that Mr. Kluber is striking out 29.5% of batters, 14.4% swing and strike rate. Everything going in his favor tonight. Also very low home run per 9, 0.52. In Safeco Field tonight, he's obviously your top option. I don't think it's particularly close. You don't love that he's not a big favorite, but there aren't any real sizable favorites tonight. Only one that stands above the rest, but we'll get to him in a minute. And he's not a guy that you have a ton of faith in. Corey Kluber's got to be your top option. He's going to be very heavily owned tonight. Obviously, you have to play 2 pitchers tonight, so I'll try to help you find your number 2 pitcher. Next up, you got A.J. Burnett. He's facing off against San Diego, obviously in Petco Park. And this one, the lowest total of the night, 6.5. Burnett is a minus 125 favorite over Ian Kennedy. And this is a San Diego team that, once again, also hasn't been very good against righties. 21.9% strikeout rate, 294 WOBA, 138 ISO, just below the Mariners, actually. But Burnett doesn't quite have the upside that you have from Corey Kluber. He's got a fine strikeout rate, 23.1%, but he's also strike walking almost 8% of batters. And his ground ball rate, though, is elite, 54.8%, but his left on base percentage, 88.8%. Going to be really impossible to maintain that high number. So I think Burnett's certainly in play, but over $10,000, I may pair him with Corey Kluber if I can, just due to the fact that it is a low total and he's in a good spot against a team that really doesn't hit righties very well. But it's going to be kind of tough to get some of the few big bats I think you need tonight. And as you look below that, Shelby Miller is a fine option against San Francisco. Not a guy that I love. I just don't love targeting this guy. He's got good stuff, but also the Giants are 4th in the league against right-handed pitching, striking out under 18% of the time, 326 team WOBA. Not a route that I'll be traveling much tonight. He does have the upside because he's efficient, but doesn't strike out a ton of batters. If you look at his numbers here, a 20.7% strikeout rate, just above league average. So yeah, he's a fine option on most slates. Not a ton of upside in this one. So you can certainly look at him in tournaments, but he's not going to be a guy I'm going to be playing in cash games. Elsewhere you look, Ian Kennedy at $7,100 is interesting against Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh was really, really bad against righties this year, or lefties this year. About league average against righties, 304 team WOBA, 19.6% strikeout rate. So you can look his way in tournaments. And then your biggest favorite on the night, Chris Heston, $6,100, obviously against Atlanta. And you look at what the Braves have done against righties this year. Once again, another one not in a great spot. They got off to a really hot start. They don't strike out much, 16.6% of the time, 309 team WOBA, right at league average. You just don't love the upside with Heston tonight. I think he's certainly in play for tournaments, especially because he's $6,100 tonight. But I think he's more of a secondary cash option, I'll say, here due to that. I'm not touching any of these other pitchers, guys like CC Sabathia, James Paxton opposing Kluber. No thanks there. As we move to catcher, Brian McCann is your top option against Kendall Graveman in Oakland. $4,400, kind of expensive, but I think he's by far the top option. You're also looking at Buster Posey, and thankfully DraftKings still has the multi-position eligibility for guys like Carlos Santana, who you can play for $4K at catcher. I do love him tonight in that spot. If you're going cheap, Derek Norris at $3,200 is interesting, and also you're going to look at Roberto Perez. If he's batting, should be batting right around 9th, but at $2,500, I don't think he's a bad punt for this short slate. First base, of course, a ton of options, even on a short slate. Miguel Cabrera, $4,900 against C.J. Wilson. Going to want to get yourself a piece of that in your tournaments, especially. Brandon Belt against Shelby Miller is an interesting play, but kind of pricey for me. I think I'd rather go with a guy like Freddie Freeman against Chris Heston. He's been mashing right. He's hitting a ton of line drives, which is great in that spacious ballpark. Albert Pujols, if you're trying to get a piece of Buck Farmer, $4,200. Could certainly go that route. Elsewhere, obviously Santana, once again, first base eligibility, you can look that way. And then if you want to go cheap, I like Billy Butler, $3,400 against the lefty and Sabathia. The guy mashes lefties. Sabathia has been awful against righties this year. And, I mean, just looking at his numbers against righties, it's pretty terrible. So, among the worst, actually the worst among all the pitchers tonight against right-handed batters. Billy Butler certainly in play for me. If you want to go even cheaper than that, Nick Swisher is the only guy I'd consider, and he's more of a tournament option for me. Second base, if you can afford Jason Kipnis, he's your play. $4,700 against James Paxton. You don't care that it's lefty-lefty. Kipnis is crushing everyone right now. Ben Zobrist, your other option at $3,800 against Sabathia. Already, once again, he hits lefties. Sabathia is not good against righties. You got to like that. I'm not paying for Cano, especially not in a Kluber matchup. He's kind of off my radar completely, even for tournaments. Neil Walker, $3,700 against Kennedy is interesting if you want a swerve. Outside of that, I don't think I'm going to be going particularly cheap here. And there's really no options down there. You like maybe Corey Spangenberg if he's got a nice lineup spot. He's only $2,400. You could go that route, but not one that I'll be doing more than maybe once in a tournament. Third base, I'm going for Alex Rodriguez, A-Rod, $4,100 against Kendall Graveman. I think he's your best option there. Got some upside. Obviously, Graveman pitched well in his last start, but not a guy that I have much faith in here. Chase Headley, his teammate, 4K, not a bad option there either. If you're chasing a home run, Pedro Alvarez, that's pretty much what you're chasing with him. He's got 9 of them on the season. We know Ian Kennedy does struggle with the long ball at times, so I don't think he's a bad option at 4K. But I think I'd rather go with Josh Harrison at 3,800, just below him. Got a little bit higher of a floor for cash games, but Pedro Alvarez would be your tournament option there. Lonnie Chisenhall had a big game last time out. Obviously, lefty-lefty here. Hit lefties pretty well last season. Hasn't done that so much this year, but I think he's interesting for tournaments there as well at 3,500. Nobody cheap that I'm a big fan of here. Shortstop, Eric Ibar should be leading off against Buck Farmer. $3,700. You got to like him. Mike Aviles against the lefty at 33 is a fine option. Jung Ho Kang, $3,300 against Ian Kennedy. Certainly looking his way as well. And if you're looking for a tournament option, Brandon Crawford, you got to hate the lineup spot again, 6th or 7th. But $3,900 against Shelby Miller, not a bad option there either. And if you're just trying to get cheap exposure to Kendall Graveman, you go Didi Gregorius if you want, just because he's cheap at 3K. But that's only if you just need a filler right there. Nothing else fits. Outfield, I think you need to have Mike Trout tonight. $5,300. He's by far the best hitter on the slate tonight. Only other guy who's kind of close would be Nelson Cruz, but he's facing off against the top pitcher of the night. So Mike Trout, $5,300 if you can get him in. I'm going to do what I can to get him in my lineups tonight. 5-game slate, there's not going to be a lot of guys with big-time upside. Obviously, Trout has the highest of anyone outside of maybe Nelson Cruz, but not in that matchup. Andrew McCutchen, really starting to get it going. He gets Ian Kennedy tonight. I don't mind him at 47 as a nice swerve play there. Elsewhere, Cole Calhoun, I'm going to try to pair him with Trout if I can at 4,300. Got to like that matchup there against Buck Farmer. Of course, Brett Gardner with the big stolen base upside. In Oakland, he's got speed. Maybe he gets a hold of one, puts one into the gap. We know we can turn singles into doubles, doubles into triples quickly. Going to be looking that route. Ben Zobrist, you can play in the outfield, but with not many second base options, I think I'll be leaving him for second base. Gregory Polanco with $3,800. Got a ton of speed in Petco. Big ballpark, so you don't expect him to hit one out, but if he hits one into a gap, once again, same thing like Brett Gardner there. And Rajai Davis, $3,600, way too cheap, leading off against the lefty. He'll be one of my cash game staples for tonight as well. And then when you're looking at cheaper options here, already mentioned Nick Swisher. You can play him in the outfield. He's probably better served for the outfield with first base having a lot of options as usual. Other guys, Billy Burns, if he's leading off against Sabathia, you don't mind him because he's under 3K, $2,900. And then, of course, your discount of the day, Ryan Rayburn, $2,600 against the lefty. Just get him into your lineups. Don't overthink this. Short slate, he's going to be highly owned. Got to get yourself some Ryan Rayburn against an average lefty and James Paxton. And with that, that's going to wrap things up. Subscribe to our YouTube channel if you like what we're doing here. We try to give you the best content every day. And find us on Twitter at DFCafe. And then find our website, dailyfantasycafe.com, for all of your needs for tonight's slate and every other slate. And we will see you again